Part 47. Now in Matthew 16:27 through 28, Jesus told them that some of them standing there wouldn't die until he returned in his kingdom and rewarded every man according to their works. Now here in Revelation chapter 20, it tells us that that happens after the 1,000-year reign. How is it that people think that that's an actual 1,000 years? People didn't live for 1,000 years waiting to be judged according to their works. Chapter 21, John says, "And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea." At the beginning of the book of Revelation, as soon as John is caught up to heaven, he says that there is a sea of glass before the throne. A door in heaven had to be opened so he could get up there. Then those that were caught up stood on a sea of glass mingled with fire. In this new heaven and new earth, whenever you die, you see a light, because heaven is open to us. Men are allowed into heaven. Judgment has already come. God has instant judgment now. We're not waiting for the judgment. So this is a new heaven and a new earth. They said back then, Jesus said that heaven and earth would pass in that generation. They said, "For the fashion of this world passes away." Peter said that the elements would melt with a fervent heat. That word elements does not mean rocks, the periodic table. The word elements means rudiments and customs. It's like saying you went to a movie and you liked the movie, but you didn't like certain elements of the movie. Just like Peter also said. He told them that the end of all things was at hand, to be sober and watch. But let's get into these last two chapters, then I'll explain everything. The Bible never describes this new earth to anyone. If you read Isaiah chapter 65 and 66, all he says about the new earth is, he says, "As the new heaven and the new earth shall stay before me, so shall New Jerusalem stay before me." Then he talks about New Jerusalem. Here, in Revelation chapter 21, he says, "And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea." But then he talks about New Jerusalem. He says, "And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband." And all the rest of this is talking about New Jerusalem, which is a city that sits in the air above Old Jerusalem here on earth. New Jerusalem is spiritual. It was heavenly. Hebrews chapter 12 said it was a mount that could not be touched and called it heavenly Jerusalem. And they sat down with God in heavenly places, and flesh and blood did not inherit it. You couldn't touch it. You couldn't see it. Their reward was in heaven, not on the earth. His kingdom is not of this world. They look for a city whose builder and maker is God. It's a spiritual city. Flesh and blood do not inherit heaven or this New Jerusalem that we're about to talk about. Stay tuned.